The stars looked different now. Commander Vextar pressed his scaled hands against the viewing window of his flagship and watched the peaceful galaxy spread before him. Trade ships moved like glowing dots between the star systems. No wars, no conflicts. Just the steady hum of a civilization that had learned to live in harmony. It had been over 1,000 years since the humans disappeared. Vextar remembered the old stories his grandfather used to tell. Stories about a violent race that lived on a small blue planet called Earth. They fought wars with weapons that could destroy entire cities. They poisoned their own air and water. Then one day they were simply gone. "Commander," his communications officer called out. "We are receiving the daily reports from all sectors." Vextar nodded and walked back to his command chair. The reports were always the same these days. Mining operations running smoothly, trade agreements being signed, new colonies being established. The Galactic Federation had grown strong in the absence of humanity. The Federation was made up of many different alien races. The reptilian Vorthak like Vextar controlled the military forces. The crystalline Zephyrians handled science and research. The insect-like Creton managed trade and commerce. Together, they had built something beautiful from the ashes of the old galaxy. On the research station orbiting the former human homeworld, Dr. Cathara was studying ancient human artifacts. She was a Zephyrian, her body made of living crystal that sparkled with inner light. For 30 years, she had been trying to understand what happened to the humans. They were such a strange species, she said to her assistant as she examined a primitive human weapon. They created beautiful art and music, but they also built machines designed only to kill. How could one race contain such opposites? Her assistant, a young Zephyrian named Veltar, looked at the weapon with curiosity. "Do you think they really destroyed themselves, Doctor?" Dr. Kithara's crystal body dimmed slightly. "All the evidence points to it. Their planet shows signs of massive environmental damage. Their final transmissions speak of wars and disasters. One day they were there, sending signals across space. The next day, silence." She moved to another display case containing human books and digital storage devices. Most of the information was corrupted or incomplete, but what remained painted a picture of a species constantly at war with itself. They had split themselves into hundreds of different nations and groups, each fighting for resources and territory. "The Federation uses their story as a warning," Dr. Cathara continued. "This is what happens when a species develops powerful technology without developing wisdom to match it." Across the galaxy, in the Federation capital on the world of Nexus Prime, the High Council was meeting. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in a great circular chamber, discussing trade agreements and colonial expansion. The chamber was a symbol of everything the Federation had achieved: peace, cooperation, progress. Council leader Zephyron, an ancient Zephyrian whose crystal body had grown large and complex over centuries of life, called for attention. "The 500th anniversary of the Great Prosperity Accords approaches. We should celebrate how far we have come," the other council members agreed. In the 500 years since the accords were signed, not a single war had been fought between Federation members. Disputes were settled through negotiation. Resources were shared fairly. It was the golden age that every civilization dreamed of achieving. But while the politicians celebrated and the scientists studied ancient ruins, something was stirring in the dark space between galaxies. Long-range sensor stations at the edge of Federation territory began picking up strange readings. Energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. Movement where there should be nothing but empty void. Lieutenant Commander Hexenal was monitoring the sensor station at grid point 77 Alpha when the first readings appeared. He was a Cretan, with compound eyes that could process multiple data streams at once. At first he thought the sensors were malfunctioning. "This cannot be right," he muttered, adjusting the controls. "These readings suggest massive objects moving through intergalactic space." He ran the scans again. The results were the same. Something big was coming toward the galaxy, something that did not match any known Federation technology or natural phenomenon. Hexenal immediately contacted Fleet Command. Within hours, Admiral Zekthul was reviewing the data. The Vorthak Admiral was old and experienced, having served in the military for over 2 centuries. He had seen false alarms before. Probably a sensor glitch, he told his staff, or maybe a previously unknown asteroid field. Nothing to worry about. But as days passed, more sensor stations reported similar readings. The objects were definitely artificial. They were massive. and they were heading directly toward Federation space. Dr. Cathera was called in to consult. She studied the sensor data with growing confusion. The energy signatures are completely unknown, she reported. But there is something familiar about the structural patterns. Familiar how? Admiral Zekthul asked. Dr. Cathera hesitated. It reminds me of something from the old human databases. But that is impossible. Humans have been extinct for 1,000 years. On his flagship, Commander Vextar received the emergency briefing. He looked at the data with the same confusion as everyone else. The objects were still weeks away at their current speed, but they were definitely heading for the core systems of Federation space. What do we know about their intentions? He asked his intelligence officer. Nothing, sir. They have not responded to any of our communication attempts. They just keep coming. Vextar studied the tactical displays. The Federation had grown soft during the long peace. Their military was designed for keeping order, not fighting wars. Most of their ships were explorers and traders with minimal weapons. Prepare the fleet for possible first contact procedures, he ordered. And send word to all Federation worlds. We may be about to meet a new species. But deep down, Vextar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. Something about these readings reminded him of the old stories. Stories about a race that built weapons capable of destroying worlds. Stories about humans. As the unknown ships drew closer, long-range scanners finally got clear images. The Federation analysts stared in shock at what they saw. The ships bore markings that had been extinct for a millennium. Symbols that belonged to humanity. The humans were coming home. Captain Alex Carter stood perfectly still on the bridge of the UES Resurrection, watching the galaxy that his species had left behind so long ago. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the distant lights of Federation ships gathering in defensive formations. They were afraid. He could sense their fear even across the vast distances of space. Alex was human, but not the same kind of human that had once lived on Earth. His body was taller and stronger than his ancestors, with enhanced senses that could perceive things no natural human eye could see. His mind processed information at speeds that would have seemed impossible 1,000 years ago. Captain, said Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez from the communication station, we are receiving multiple transmissions from Federation vessels. They want to know who we are and what we want. Maya looked human too, but like Alex, she was something more. Her fingers moved across the control panels without touching them. Her enhanced neural interface connecting directly with the ship's systems. Her eyes glowed faintly with internal light as she processed dozens of alien languages simultaneously. What are they saying? Alex asked. Mostly the same thing over and over. They keep asking if we are really human. Some of them think we might be using old human ship designs to fool them. Others believe we are descendants of humans who escaped before the extinction. Alex almost smiled. If only they knew the truth. Humans had not escaped. They had not hidden in distant colonies. They had done something far more radical. They had chosen to leave biological existence behind and rebuild themselves from scratch. On the massive command ship UES Phoenix Rising, Admiral Lisa Kane was coordinating the human fleet. She sat in a chair that seemed to be made of flowing metal, constantly shifting to match her body's position. Her uniform appeared to be cloth, but it was actually composed of billions of microscopic machines that could adapt to any environment. Status report, Lisa commanded. Commander Jake Sullivan, her tactical officer, consulted displays that floated in the air around him. Federation forces are taking defensive positions around their core worlds. They have approximately 3,000 ships mobilized across 15 sectors. Their technology appears to be roughly equivalent to what humans were using before the transformation. Lisa nodded. The Federation had advanced during humanity's absence, but they had advanced slowly. They had grown comfortable and safe. They had forgotten that the universe was a dangerous place that required constant adaptation. Any hostile movements? She asked. None yet. They seemed to be waiting for us to make the first move. Dr. Elena Vasquez was in her laboratory deep within the Phoenix Rising, studying the biological data they had collected about the current galactic inhabitants. She was fascinated by how little the various alien species had changed in 1,000 years. Remarkable, she said to her research assistant. They have achieved technological advancement, but their biological evolution has essentially stopped. They have made themselves comfortable and decided that was enough. Her assistant, a young human named Peter Chen, looked at the genetic samples floating in containment fields. Is that necessarily bad? They seem happy. Elena considered the question. Happiness and growth are not the same thing. These species have chosen safety over advancement. They have built a stable civilization, but they have also built limitations into their own development. Meanwhile, on the Federation flagship, Commander Vextar was trying to make sense of the impossible situation. His science officers had analyzed the human ships and confirmed what everyone feared to believe. These were definitely human vessels, but they incorporated technology that should not exist. The ships appear to be made of a programmable matter, reported his chief scientist. The hull composition changes as we watch. It is as if the ships are alive and constantly adapting. Vexitar felt his scales bristle with unease. How is that possible? Humans were barely capable of faster-than-light travel when they disappeared. I do not know, Commander, but these readings are clear. Whatever these humans have become, they are far beyond what they once were. The first formal meeting was arranged at Space Station Unity, a massive structure located in neutral space between Federation territory and the approaching human fleet. Ambassador Caroline Wright volunteered to represent humanity at the historic encounter. Caroline stepped off the human shuttle and immediately drew stares from the alien diplomats waiting to greet her. She moved with fluid grace that seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity. Her features were recognizably human, but perfected in ways that suggested careful design rather than natural evolution. "Welcome to Space Station Unity," said Council Leader Zephyron, his crystal body resonating with formal tones. "We are honored to meet with representatives of humanity after so many centuries." Caroline smiled, and her smile seemed to contain depths of knowledge and experience that unsettled the watching aliens. "The honor is ours, Council Leader. We have much to discuss." The formal reception was held in the station's main conference room. Representatives from dozens of Federation species gathered to see the returned humans with their own eyes. What they saw confused and worried them. Caroline was accompanied by 3 other humans, Dr. Marcus Chen, Captain Nicole Barnes, and Security Chief Ryan Hayes. All 4 moved with the same impossible grace. All 4 seemed to radiate an aura of barely contained power. "Please," said Zephyron, "tell us where humanity has been for the past millennium. Our records indicate that your species went extinct. How did you survive?" Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward. Unlike the others, he appeared to be an elderly human with gray hair and weathered features. But his eyes held the same depths as his companions. "We did not survive," Marcus said simply. "We chose a different path. We chose transformation." The alien delegates exchanged confused glances. "Transformation? What did that mean?" "I do not understand," said Admiral Zekthul. "You appear to be human. Your ships carry human markings. How can you say you did not survive?" Marcus looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each alien representative. "The humans you knew, the humans of your historical records, no longer exist. We are what they chose to become." Captain Nicole Barnes demonstrated by walking to one of the station's computer terminals. Without touching any controls, the screen lit up with information. Data flowed across the display at impossible speeds as Nicole interfaced directly with the system using only her thoughts. Security Chief Ryan Hayes casually lifted a chair that weighed several hundred pounds with one hand, then gently set it down without disturbing anything else on the table. Dr. Marcus Chen activated a small device that projected a 3-dimensional star map, showing the path humanity had taken during their 1,000-year absence. The map revealed travels through cosmic regions that no known technology could survive. Caroline Wright spoke to the stunned aliens in their own languages, switching effortlessly between dozens of different forms of communication, including some that used sound frequencies beyond the range of natural hearing. "We understand your confusion," Caroline said. "We once were what you remember, but we chose to become something more." The conference room on Space Station Unity had fallen completely silent. The alien delegates stared at Ambassador Caroline Wright with expressions ranging from confusion to fear. Her simple statement that humans had chosen to become something more had shaken everything they thought they knew about life and evolution. Council Leader Zephyron was the first to find his voice. His crystalline body flickered with nervous energy as he spoke. "Ambassador Wright, I must ask you to explain what you mean by transformation. How does a species choose to become something different?" Carolyn moved to the center of the room with that same fluid grace that defied normal physics. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate directly in the minds of her listeners. making her words impossible to ignore or forget. 1,000 years ago, humanity faced a choice, she began. We could continue down the path of biological evolution, waiting millions of years for natural selection to improve our capabilities. Or we could take control of our own development and guide our evolution according to our own vision. Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward to continue the explanation. We chose the second path. Using advanced consciousness transfer technology and genetic engineering, we uploaded our minds into quantum substrates and rebuilt our physical forms from the ground up. Admiral Zekthul's reptilian features twisted with disbelief. That is impossible. Consciousness cannot be separated from the biological brain that creates it. Marcus smiled gently. That is what we once believed as well. But consciousness is simply information organized in specific patterns. Information can be copied, transferred, and enhanced. We spent centuries perfecting the process. Captain Nicole Barnes walked over to one of the station's main computer terminals. The screen was protected by multiple layers of security that should have been impossible to breach. Nicole placed her hand near the surface without touching it, and immediately every security system shut down. The computer began displaying its deepest programming code. We learned to interface directly with digital systems, Nicole explained. Our minds are no longer limited by the slow chemical processes of biological neurons. We can think at the speed of light and process information in ways that biological brains never could. Security Chief Ryan Hayes demonstrated the physical improvements. He moved across the room so quickly that the alien eyes could barely follow him. He lifted the massive conference table with one finger, then set it down so gently that not a single object on its surface moved. We redesigned our bodies to be stronger, faster, and more adaptable than any biological form, Ryan said. We can survive in environments that would instantly kill any natural life form. We can adapt our physical structure to meet any challenge. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had joined the meeting via holographic projection from the Phoenix Rising, added her perspective. The process was not simple or quick. We spent over 300 years in accelerated virtual environments, experiencing thousands of years of subjective time. We tested and refined every aspect of our new existence before committing to it. The alien delegates were struggling to comprehend what they were hearing. The concept of voluntary extinction and rebirth was beyond anything in their experience or philosophy. But why? Asked Dr. Kithera, who had been brought to the station specifically to study the returned humans. Why abandon what you were? Your species had art, music, literature. You had emotions and creativity. What did you gain that was worth giving up your humanity? Caroline's expression softened, showing something that might have been compassion. We did not give up our humanity, Dr. Kithera. We enhanced it. We kept everything that made us human, and added capabilities that allowed us to become more than we ever could have been naturally. She gestured, and the air in the room seemed to shimmer. Suddenly, the aliens could hear music that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was beautiful beyond anything they had ever experienced, composed of harmonies that touched emotional depths they had not known existed. This is human music, Caroline said, created by minds that can perceive and express beauty in ways that biological brains cannot imagine. Marcus Chen activated another demonstration. The walls of the conference room suddenly displayed a three-dimensional map of local space. But this map showed not just the locations of stars and planets, but the flows of energy and matter between them. It was like seeing the galaxy as a living, breathing organism. This is how we perceive reality now, Marcus explained. We can see the connections between all things. We understand the patterns that govern the universe at levels that were invisible to our biological ancestors. Dr. Patricia Lee, another human representative who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. We spent our first century after the transformation simply learning to exist in our new forms. The second century was devoted to exploration and discovery. We traveled to places no biological life could survive. We learned from phenomena that most species consider impossible to approach. She created a holographic display showing images from humanity's journey through the cosmic void. The aliens saw humans walking on the surfaces of neutron stars, swimming through the plasma fields around black holes, and building structures in the hearts of distant galaxies. We learned to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, Patricia continued. We discovered that reality itself is far more flexible than most species realize. What you call the laws of physics are more like guidelines that can be bent by those who understand them deeply enough. Commander Jake Sullivan appeared via hologram from the human fleet. We also learned about ourselves. What it truly means to be human is not tied to our biological forms. It is our curiosity, our drive to grow and improve, our refusal to accept limitations as permanent. These qualities were enhanced by our transformation, not diminished. The Federation representatives sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. They were not dealing with an advanced version of the primitive humans from their historical records. They were facing something entirely new in galactic history, a species that had deliberately transcended the boundaries of biological existence. "How many of you are there?" asked Vextar quietly. "All of us," Caroline replied. "Every human who lived at the time of the transformation chose to participate. We became something new together. As a species, no one was left behind." Admiral Zekthul leaned forward in his chair. "And now you have returned. What do you want from the galaxy? What are your intentions toward the Federation?" Caroline looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each alien representative. "We want what we have always wanted. To explore, to learn, to grow. The galaxy has changed much in our absence. We are curious to see what you have built, what you have learned, what you have become." "But surely you must want something," insisted Council Leader Zephron. "Territory, resources, political control." Marcus Chen shook his head. "We can create whatever resources we need. We have no interest in political control over others. We seek partnership, not dominance." The meeting continued for hours, but the fundamental truth had been established. Humanity had returned, but they were no longer the species that had once threatened galactic peace. They had become something unprecedented, a civilization that had successfully directed its own evolution and emerged as masters of reality itself. As the session ended, Caroline made one final statement that would echo through Federation space for years to come. "The universe is vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. We invite you to join us in exploring those wonders. But understand this, the comfortable age of limited growth and safe boundaries is ending. The galaxy is about to become a much larger and more exciting place." 3 days after the historic meeting at Space Station Unity, Admiral Zekthul made a decision that would change everything. Despite the warnings from his diplomatic advisors, he decided that the Federation needed to test these returned humans. They needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. "I do not trust them," Zekthul told his senior staff aboard the Federation battleship Sovereign's Might. "They make claims about their abilities, but claims are not proof. We need to see what they can actually do." His tactical officer, a young Vorthak named Kexlar, hesitated before speaking. "Admiral, with respect, what if their claims are true? What if we provoke them into hostile action?" Zekthul's eyes narrowed. "Then we learn whether the Federation military can defend itself against these so-called enhanced humans. Better to know now than to be caught unprepared later." The challenge was delivered through official diplomatic channels. The Federation proposed a series of military exercises to better understand human capabilities. They framed it as mutual cooperation and learning, but everyone involved knew it was really a test. Captain Alex Carter received the challenge aboard the UES Resurrection. He looked at the formal invitation with something that might have been amusement. "They want to test us," he told his bridge crew. "Admiral Zekthul has assembled a battle group of 50 ships and wants to engage in war games." Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez looked up from her communication station. 50 ships against how many of ours? They are suggesting we use 5 ships to make it fair." Commander Jake Sullivan laughed. "Fair to whom?" Alex considered the situation. The humans could have refused the challenge, but that would only increase Federation suspicions and fears. Better to give them the demonstration they wanted and settle the question once and for all. "Accept the challenge," Alex decided, "but tell them we will only need 3 ships." 2 days later, in an empty star system designated as the testing ground, the Federation battle group waited in formation. Admiral Zekthul commanded from his flagship, surrounded by the most advanced warships the Federation had ever built. Their shields were powered up, their weapons ready, their crews prepared for combat. Colonel Sam Morrison led the human squadron from his ship, the UES Lightning Strike. With him were Captain Beth Thompson in the UES Stormfront and Commander Tony Martinez in the UES Thunderchild. 3 small ships against 50 massive Federation vessels. "Begin the exercise," Admiral Zekthul commanded. What happened next would be discussed and analyzed by Federation military strategists for decades to come. The 3 human ships simply vanished from all sensors. One moment they were there, clearly visible on the tactical displays. The next moment they were gone. Where did they go? Zekthul demanded. His sensor officer, a crystalline Zephyrian, worked frantically at his controls. I cannot locate them, Admiral. They are not cloaked. They are simply not there. Then the human ships reappeared, but not where anyone expected them. They materialized inside the Federation formation, moving between the larger vessels like shadows made of light. Their movement defied every known law of physics. They turned without thrust, accelerated without engines, and moved in directions that should have been impossible. All ships open fire, Zekthul ordered. The Federation vessels unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, plasma missiles, and particle weapons filled the space around the human ships. But nothing hit its target. The human vessels seemed to exist slightly out of phase with normal space-time, allowing the weapons to pass harmlessly through them. Colonel Morrison opened a communication channel. Admiral Zekthul, our ships are now going to demonstrate defensive capabilities. The lightning strike moved directly into the path of a massive energy beam from the Federation flagship. Instead of being destroyed, the ship absorbed the energy and redirected it back at 3 other Federation vessels, overloading their shields in a controlled manner that caused no damage but completely disabled their weapons. Captain Thompson's ship, the Stormfront, demonstrated something even more impressive. When a squadron of Federation fighters attempted to engage it, the ship seemed to split into multiple copies of itself. Suddenly, there were dozens of Stormfronts moving in perfect coordination, each one as real as the others. Commander Martinez took a different approach. His ship, the Thunderchild, allowed itself to be surrounded by Federation vessels. Then it began to grow. The ship's hull expanded and reshaped itself, creating new weapon ports and shield generators in real time. Within minutes, the Thunderchild had become larger than the Federation flagship, while maintaining perfect maneuverability. This is impossible, whispered Zekthul's tactical officer. Ships cannot change their own structure during combat. The demonstration continued for 2 hours. The human ships showed that they could become invisible, multiply themselves, reshape their hulls, absorb and redirect energy, and move through normal space in ways that violated everything the Federation understood about physics. But the space battle was only the beginning. Admiral Zekthul had also arranged for ground combat exercises on a barren moon in the same system. General Kate Phillips led a squad of 12 human soldiers against 200 of the Federation's elite troops. The Federation forces established defensive positions in a series of rocky canyons, using natural terrain and artificial barriers to create what should have been an impregnable fortress. They had energy shields, automated weapons, and air support from hovering gunships. General Phillips and her squad approached the canyon on foot, wearing what appeared to be simple uniforms with no visible armor or heavy weapons. The Federation observers expected a quick defeat that would at least prove that humans could be overwhelmed by superior numbers. Instead, they witnessed something that would haunt their dreams for years to come. The human soldiers moved like liquid mercury, flowing around obstacles and through defensive positions that should have stopped them cold. When plasma bolts were fired at them, they simply stepped sideways into dimensions that the Federation sensors could not detect. Private Linda. Foster demonstrated the human's adaptive capabilities by growing additional arms when she needed to climb a sheer cliff face. When she reached the top, the extra limbs simply melted back into her body, as if they had never existed. Sergeant Kevin Wright showed that human soldiers could interface directly with enemy equipment. He walked up to a Federation automated turret and placed his hand on its armored shell. Immediately, the turret turned and began firing on its own forces, perfectly controlled by Kevin's neural interface. The most shocking demonstration came from Corporal Janet Hayes. When a Federation gunship attempted to strafe the human positions, Janet jumped into the air and kept rising. She flew directly at the heavily armored aircraft using no visible means of propulsion. When she reached it, she tore through the hull plating with her bare hands and disabled the engine systems without harming the crew. The ground exercise lasted only 20 minutes. When it was over, every Federation position had been neutralized. Every defensive system had been bypassed or turned against its users, and not a single Federation soldier had been seriously injured despite their complete defeat. Dr. Andrew Foster provided the final demonstration. He was a human scientist who had volunteered to show the Federation representatives what humanity had learned during their 1,000-year journey through the cosmic void, standing In an empty space between the moon and the star, system's primary planet, Dr. Foster began to manipulate fundamental forces with casual gestures. He created a small gravity well with one hand, generating a miniature planet complete with its own atmosphere and weather systems. With his other hand, he opened what appeared to be a window into another dimension, showing the assembled observers a view of distant galaxies. These are basic applications of force manipulation, Dr. Foster explained through the communication system. We learned these techniques by studying black holes and neutron stars. Reality is much more flexible than most species realize. He demonstrated matter creation by converting energy from the nearby star into solid materials, building a small space station in a matter of minutes. Then he showed matter conversion by transforming a nearby asteroid into pure energy, which he captured and stored in devices that materialized from thin air. Admiral Zekthul watched these demonstrations from his flagship with growing horror. The Federation's most advanced technology seemed primitive compared to what the humans could accomplish with their bare hands. How do we fight something like this? He asked his staff. The answer came from his science officer, a wise old Zephyrian named Kyle. Admiral, I do not think we are supposed to fight them. I think we are supposed to learn from them. The implications were clear to everyone who witnessed the demonstrations. Humanity had not returned as conquerors because they did not need to conquer. They had transcended the need for conflict by becoming something that could not be threatened or defeated by conventional means. The comfortable age of Federation superiority was over. The galaxy now belonged to beings who could reshape reality itself with their thoughts and will. The emergency session of the Federation Council had been going for 6 hours, and no one could agree on what to do about the humans. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy as news of the demonstrations spread. Some worlds were panicking. Others were demanding immediate action against the returned humans. A few were asking how they could learn from these incredible beings. Council leader Zephron tried to maintain order as representatives from dozens of species argued loudly in the Great Chamber. His ancient crystalline body dimmed with exhaustion as he listened to the same fears and suggestions repeated over and over. We must demand that they leave Federation space. Immediately, declared Senator Vexnall of the Vorthak Empire. They are too dangerous to be allowed to remain. And how exactly would we enforce such a demand? Replied Dr. Kithera, who had become something of an expert on human capabilities. They have demonstrated that our military technology cannot even touch them. On the other side of the galaxy, President Victoria Adams stood on the restored surface of Earth, looking up at a sky that blazed with colors that had never existed in nature. Human terraforming technology had not only repaired the damage from their ancestors' departure, but had enhanced the planet beyond its original beauty. The oceans sparkled with microscopic organisms that generated their own light. The continents were covered with forests of trees that grew in impossible spirals, reaching toward space itself. Cities floated in the air, connected by bridges of crystallized energy that sang in harmonies audible from orbit. "It is beautiful," said Ambassador Caroline Wright, who had returned from the Federation negotiations. "Our ancestors would be amazed by what we have accomplished." Victoria nodded, but her attention was focused on the streams of data flowing through her enhanced consciousness. She was simultaneously monitoring the Federation Council session, tracking the movement of human ships throughout the galaxy, and coordinating with research teams studying the evolutionary progress of various alien species. "The Federation is struggling to understand us," Victoria observed. "They keep trying to fit us into categories that no longer apply. Enemy or ally, conqueror or trading partner. They cannot comprehend beings who exist outside their limited framework." Engineer Tony Martinez was working with a team of Zephyrian scientists on the research station orbiting Earth's moon. The aliens watched in amazement as Tony demonstrated human construction techniques. He was building a new laboratory using nothing but focused thought and energy manipulation. "This violates every engineering principle we know," said Dr. Veltar, the young Zephyrian who had once assisted Dr. Kithera. "How can you create stable structures without physical supports?" Tony smiled patiently as he shaped matter into configurations that should have collapsed under their own weight, but instead held together perfectly. "Your engineering is based on working against natural forces. Our engineering is based on working with them. When you understand the underlying patterns of reality, you can make matter behave in ways that seem impossible." The Zephyrian scientists took careful notes, but Tony could see the confusion in their crystalline features. They were trying to understand advanced concepts using primitive frameworks. It would take time for them to adapt. Meanwhile, the Vorthak Empire was experiencing internal conflict on a scale not seen for centuries. Admiral Zekthul led a faction that demanded immediate military action against the humans, despite the obvious futility of such an approach. We cannot simply accept their presence, Zekthul argued, at a meeting of Vorthak military leaders. If we bow to them now, we will never regain our independence. But General Kakstar, one of the Empire's most respected strategists, disagreed. Admiral, independence from what? The humans have made no demands on us. They have not threatened our territory or our way of life. They have simply demonstrated that they are beyond our ability to threaten or control. That is exactly the problem, Zekthul replied. No one should have that much power. Commander Laura Scott was establishing new diplomatic protocols from her base on Mars, which had been transformed into a garden world of impossible beauty. She found the Federation's fear understandable but ultimately pointless. They are afraid because they cannot control us, Laura explained to her staff. Every political system they know is based on the ability to threaten or destroy opponents. When faced with beings who cannot be threatened or destroyed, their entire worldview breaks down. Dr. Patricia Lee was conducting research on the evolutionary potential of various Federation species. Her findings were both fascinating and concerning. While the aliens had achieved remarkable technological advancement, their biological and mental development had essentially stopped. They have made themselves comfortable, Patricia reported to the Human Council. They have eliminated most sources of stress and challenge from their lives. Without pressure to adapt and grow, they have stagnated. But not all Federation species were responding with fear. Some were asking different questions. How could they learn from humanity? How could they improve themselves? How could they join the humans in their exploration of cosmic possibilities? Dr. Cathara was among these curious few. She approached Commander Scott with a proposal that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. We want to study your transformation process, Cathara said during a meeting on Mars. Not to copy it exactly, but to understand the principles behind it. Perhaps we can find our own path to enhancement. Laura considered the request carefully. The transformation is not something that can be forced or rushed. It requires a complete willingness to abandon everything you have been in order to become something greater. Are your people ready for that level of change? Cathara's crystal body flickered with uncertainty. I do not know, but some of us are willing to try. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Young members of various species were questioning the limitations their elders accepted as natural law. If humans could transcend biological boundaries, why couldn't they? The changes began slowly. Zephyrian researchers started experimenting with consciousness expansion techniques. A few young Vorthak began training their minds to interface directly with technology. Even some Cretan traders started investigating ways to enhance their natural abilities. President Victoria Adams announced humanity's long-term plans during a broadcast that reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. Standing in a conference room that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, she addressed the Federation with words that would reshape galactic civilization. We offer partnership to any species ready to grow beyond their current limitations, Victoria said. We will share our knowledge freely with those who demonstrate the wisdom to use it responsibly. We will help guide the evolution of galactic civilization toward something greater than any of us could achieve alone. But she also made the boundaries clear. We will not force change on anyone. We will not conquer or control, but neither will we be constrained by the fears and limitations of others. The galaxy is vast, and there is room for many different approaches to existence. Engineer Tony Martinez began establishing human colonies on worlds throughout Federation space. But these were not traditional colonies. They were research centers and learning institutes where humans and aliens could work together to explore new possibilities. The first joint project was a space station built using both human and Federation technology. The aliens provided traditional engineering expertise while the humans contributed reality manipulation techniques. The result was a structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, serving as a bridge between different levels of technological understanding. On the political front, the Federation Council finally reached a decision after weeks of debate. They would officially recognize humanity's right to exist and expand in galactic space. In return, humans would share selected technologies and knowledge with Federation species that requested it. Admiral Zekthul resigned his position in protest, but he was replaced by General Caxtar, who saw cooperation with humanity as the Empire's best path forward. Dr. Andrew Foster began teaching courses in basic reality manipulation to Federation scientists. His first lesson was simple but profound. Reality is not fixed. It is a collaborative creation involving consciousness, energy, and matter. When you understand your role in that collaboration, you can begin to participate more actively. 6 months after humanity's return, the galaxy was already changing in fundamental ways. Trade routes that had been static for centuries were being redesigned using human transportation technology. Scientific research that had stagnated for decades was leaping forward with human assistance. Art and culture were experiencing a renaissance as aliens discovered new forms of expression. But perhaps the most significant change was psychological. For the first time in centuries, the peoples of the galaxy were thinking about what they could become, rather than simply what they were. The comfortable age of limited growth was ending, replaced by an era of infinite possibility. Captain Alex Carter stood on the observation deck of a human ship orbiting the galactic core, watching young representatives from dozens of species work together on projects that would have been impossible just a year earlier. Some were learning to manipulate matter with their thoughts.